There's a book out called Strangers, a Memoir of Marriage, written by Belle Burden. Right now, the book is getting very high reviews. It's having a lot of success in book sales. Belle Burden herself is giving quite a few interviews here in the past several months on podcasts and TV shows talking about her book and promoting it. I myself have not read the book. However, I've seen parts of some of the interviews that she's given where she talks about her book, and also um, I've also seen some podcasts of people who have read the book and they are giving their opinion about it. What I want to talk about today is not necessarily whether or not her book is a good book or a bad one or anything like that. I want to talk about how her marriage with her husband could have been completely and totally saved, if back in 1999, when she and her husband got married to each other, if they had had the family adultery law available to them. Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin. I'm the creator of the family adultery law. If you don't know what that is, watch this video. It's about 14 and a half minutes long. Family is spelled FAM-LI, family. This video explains the family adultery law, the 5 foundations of the family adultery law, and how they work. I want to talk some today about how Belle Burden's marriage, if she had had the family adultery law available when they got married back in 1999, more than likely her husband would never have committed adultery against her, and more than likely they'd still be married, and more than likely the two of them, including her husband, would be happy with their marriage. If you look at the 5 foundations of the family adultery law, and here they are, if you look at these 5 foundations and consider how they work, apply this to every marriage you hear about. Marriages that you hear about on the news, such as Belle Burden's, celebrities and so forth who get divorced because one is committing adultery or not. Marriages that that are completely fictional on TV shows, movies, things like that, or that you hear about with people that you actually know, where either the husband committed adultery or the wife committed adultery. Take these 5 foundations, the family adultery law, apply it to those marriages, and you'll realize that, gosh, more than likely, if those people, including Belle Burden, had had the family adultery law available to them when they first got married, more than likely, neither one of them would have committed adultery against each other. They would have resolved their problems, more than likely, without ever committing adultery against each other, and they would probably still be married today. So if you look at Belle Burden's marriage, I'm not sure how she feels about this, but more than likely, she would probably say something to the extent that in 1999, when the two of them got married, that her husband wanted to be married to her, that he was happy getting married to her, and she was happy getting married to him. Okay, well, over 20 years of time, what ended up actually happening, according to her book and things that she has said about her book, her husband, for some reason, became unhappy with the marriage. Not sure why, but it did. And so he ended up committing adultery against her and then admitted to it after she found out about it. And then he just immediately left. Well, when you look at the family adultery law, it's an individual choice law. So if they had had this back in 1999, this would have been a choice that her husband would have made. He would have wanted to have the family adultery law, starting the day he chose to marry his wife, Belle, and she, in return, wanted it as well. They would have chosen to have this. So as the years of their marriage would have continued, and if the husband or the wife is starting to feel unhappy with the marriage for any reason over a certain number of years, there's a much greater chance that instead of committing adultery, they would have gone and used one of the 5 legal choices, which you see here under the family adultery law. 5 legal choices that they have, other than the one illegal choice of adultery. Also, if you consider the fact that the two of them, um, if they would have been getting their 6-month marriage checkups, you might be wondering, what is that? Well, a 6-month marriage checkup is where a married couple every 6 months, or at least every year, but every 6 months goes into a marriage counselor for about a 1-hour session, and they just talk about their marriage. Are they happy with it or not? And most of the time, people are going to say, yeah, I'm happy with my marriage. There's nothing wrong with it. But then they go back again 6 months later. Yeah, we're happy. There's no problems here. They go back again 6 months after that. And then 6 months after that, they go again. Well, if it really does turn out that one of them, so for instance, in this case, Belle Burden's marriage, her husband, for whatever reason, was starting to become unhappy over time, if they've been getting their 6-month marriage checkups done, or at least once every year, along with the family adultery law as motivation to get their 6-month marriage checkups done, and also making it very clear that the two of them together chose that adultery would be completely forbidden in their marriage, no matter what. And that if one of them actually did commit adultery, then the other one would have the right to choose what would happen next, period, no matter what. You look at the 5 foundations of the family adultery law. That's how those 5 foundations work. And so her husband's getting a little bit unhappy with the marriage at some point, maybe 10 years or 15 years, whatever. At one of those 6-month marriage checkups, it's going to start to come out from him. He's going to admit that there's one little thing here I don't like about our marriage to his wife. He's going to say it's, I don't know. He doesn't like this or he doesn't like that. No big deal, but just something there. And then the process of healing the marriage without him ever committing adultery against her would have begun. More than likely, over the years of time, whatever it was that was causing him to be unhappy with the marriage, when he was happy with it the day they got married, would have been discovered, would have been made clear to Belle, and she could have corrected it, whatever it might have been. Not that it was Belle's fault. That's not the case. But a lot of people will, and in Belle's case, she has said in many interviews that when she found out her husband was committing adultery and then he just turned and left, it was a complete shock to her. She thought their marriage was fine. And then all of a sudden, bam, it's just completely disrupted, gone, separated. She had no idea this was coming, according to her. Okay, then. She would have found out several years, at least, probably, before he would have ever committed adultery at all in the first place, because of the family adultery law. But even if her husband would have wanted to commit adultery anyway, even after he chose to marry her, knowing that Belle was not going to sign her family adultery law waiver, foundation number 4, and he decides, well, he's going to commit adultery anyway, because he just, for whatever reason, he's not going to get marriage counseling. He's not going to file for divorce first and then commit all the adultery that he wants. He's not going to ask for a separation. Instead, he's just going to lead Belle on into thinking he's a good husband and not committing adultery, when in reality he's going to be committing adultery. Who's he going to commit adultery with? You look at foundation number 2, which states that any person who commits adultery with someone that they know is already married to someone else will be considered an equal accomplice in the victimization of adultery. Well, the lady he was committing adultery with, more than likely, she knew that this man, Belle Burden's husband, was already married. So she would not have chosen to commit adultery with him, even if he had wanted to. So the adultery still doesn't happen. And that steers him back to the 5 legal choices as a way of resolving the problems in his marriage. Not only that, but not only would Belle Burden's husband have been strongly motivated to not even commit adultery at all in the first place because his wife has her family adultery law rights. Belle Burden, she has her family adultery law rights. But he was going to be committing adultery with a lady that more than likely he knew that she was married to someone else. So her husband, he would have had his family adultery law rights too, probably. So Belle Burden's husband, is he going to want to take the risk of that lady's husband having the right to send him to jail because he's an adultery accomplice to the victimization in their marriage? He probably would not have. So again, another reason why the adultery would never have been committed by Belle Burden's husband along with that lady in that other marriage. 2 marriages would have been saved by the family adultery law. 2. That wife who wanted to commit adultery with Belle Burden's husband, she would have been steered towards the 5 legal choices to resolve problems in her marriage. Belle Burden's husband, he would have been done the same, motivated to use the 5 legal choices to solve his problems. This is the reason why, more than likely, if Belle Burden's marriage had had the family adultery law back in 1999, probably more than likely, not only would her husband have never committed adultery against her, but the 2 of them would be married and her husband would be genuinely happy because whatever the problem was that was making him unhappy compared to his happiness the day he got married, it would have been resolved or fixed one way or another. Same thing for that other marriage where the lady was committing adultery with Belle Burden's husband. 2 marriages would have been saved. So that's something to consider. When you hear about Belle Burden's book and you hear what she has to say about it and things of that nature and what other people have to say about her book, I'm sure her book is going to do a lot of good in helping people deal with adultery. But to be honest with you, in my opinion, no matter how good her book is, and no matter how much people relate to her anguish and suffering that she and her children went through, whether it's a dad who's faithful in his marriage dealing with an unfaithful wife or a mom faithful in her marriage dealing with an unfaithful husband. Moms or dads, does not matter. If they are adultery victims, they can identify with the suffering that Belle Burden went through. So her book, I'm sure, is a good book that will do good, but it won't come anywhere close to the amount of good that will be done by the family adultery law by preventing adultery victimization like this from ever happening in the first place and taking husbands who are unhappy with their marriages or wives who are unhappy with their marriages, steering them away from the choice of adultery victimization over their entire family and steering them towards one of the 5 legal choices to resolve their problems without ever victimizing their families in the first place. So consider this. Think about it. And leave comments and let me know what you think about the things I've said here. Do you agree or disagree? By all means, use your freedom of speech and your freedom of expression to peacefully and non-violently say anything you want. Okay? All right. We'll talk again.